I gave birth on a Wednesday morning, 31 hours of labour, an epidural that worked and then didn't work and then worked again. A doctor who said, "One more push, 4 times, which is 4 more times than that phrase should ever be used." And then at 7:43 in the morning, my son Oliver was placed on my chest, and the entire preceding 31 hours ceased to have any relevance whatsoever. He weighed 8 pounds and 2 ounces. He had his father's ears and my nose, and the specific expression of someone who has just arrived in a situation they find mildly suspicious. My husband Daniel held him first while the nurses did what nurses do, and Daniel, who is not a person given to displays of public emotion, who describes himself as not really a crier, and who has proved this claim across 9 years of marriage through various events that would have broken most people's composure, stood in the corner of the delivery room with our son, and his eyes were bright, and his jaw was tight in the specific way of a man who is not crying, but is making a committed effort not to. I watched this from the bed. It was the best moment of my life. We were in the hospital for 2 days. Standard recovery. Everything normal. Oliver eating and sleeping with the focus of someone who has identified his priorities and intends to pursue them. Daniel stayed both nights, sleeping in the fold-out chair that no adult human was intended to sleep in, bringing me ice chips and bad coffee, and doing the particular kind of attentive, slightly overwhelmed husband labour of those first 48 hours. We went home on Friday afternoon. We pulled into our driveway in the cool October air. Oliver in his car seat in the back. The car seat we had installed 3 weeks earlier, the one Daniel had watched 4 YouTube videos to install correctly, and then had verified at a police station child safety check. And Daniel turned off the engine, and we sat for a moment in the particular silence of 2 people who are about to carry something very important into their house for the first time. "Ready," he said. "Ready," I said. We went inside, and I walked down the hallway to Oliver's nursery, and I opened the door, and I stopped. The room I had spent 4 months planning, painting, furnishing, and arranging with the specific and particular love of a first-time mother who has put everything she has into making a space for her child was gone. Not the room itself. The room was still there. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. But everything else, the pale sage green I had spent 3 weekends choosing, and 2 more weekends painting the white crib we had assembled together in July on a Sunday afternoon while eating takeout pizza, the mobile of small wooden birds that I had ordered from a maker on Etsy, and waited 6 weeks to arrive the gallery wall of gentle watercolour prints of animals I had framed myself, the soft grey rug from the shop downtown the bookshelf with the carefully arranged first books, the hanging name letters in natural wood that spelled OLIVER. All of it was gone. In its place was a room I did not recognize. Bright white walls. Not the warm white I had chosen. A cold, stark white, freshly painted, the smell of it still faintly in the air. A different crib. Not our crib. A crib I had never seen with a bedding set in navy and red that I had not chosen and would not have chosen. Photographs. On every wall. Large framed photographs of Daniel's family, his parents, his grandparents' relatives going back decades, arranged with the comprehensive ambition of a museum installation. Daniel's mother, Patricia, featured prominently in at least 7 of them. On the shelf where Oliver's books had been a ceramic figurine of a praying child, a cross-stitched sampler that said, "God bless this child," in capital letters, and a ceramic plate with a prayer I had never seen before. My mobile of wooden birds gone, my watercolour animals gone, my sage green walls painted over, my rug gone, my bookshelf arrangement cleared and replaced. The name letters replaced with a different version larger in gold, a style I had specifically looked at and rejected. I stood in the doorway of my son's nursery, my son who was in his father's arms in the hallway behind me, my son who was 2 days old. I did not cry. I want to say that because I think some people expect that I cried, and I understand why. But what happened in me in that doorway was not grief. It was something colder and more specific. It was the particular quality of a person who has been told very clearly, and without any words at all, that nothing in their home belongs to them. I turned around. Daniel was looking at me. Then he looked past me into the room. His face did something I had never seen it do before. I will describe that face and what followed in the second part of this story. But first, let me tell you how we got here. My name is Rachel. I am 34 years old. I live in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, in the house that Daniel and I bought 3 years ago when we decided we were ready to stop renting and to build something more permanent. I work as a grant writer for a non-profit that provides legal services to low-income families. Work. I find genuinely meaningful and that I am good at, which is a combination I understand is not guaranteed and therefore try not to take for granted. I am, by most accounts, a reasonable person. I am not a pushover. I know what I think, and I say it when it matters, but I am also not someone who creates conflict as a default setting. I choose my battles. I try to extend the benefit of the doubt in the first instance and respond to the actual thing rather than the feared thing. I had extended considerable benefit of the doubt in the years before Oliver's birth to my mother-in-law. Her name is Patricia. Patricia is 64 years old. She is a retired elementary school teacher who lives 45 minutes from us in a house that is the opposite of mine in every aesthetic dimension, highly formal, heavily decorated, every surface, hosting an object of sentimental significance that Patricia has acquired over 6 decades of active accumulation. She is a woman who loves her children with a completeness that has never found a comfortable boundary. She and Daniel's father Gary divorced when Daniel was 14, and Patricia had raised Daniel and his younger sister Kim largely on her own. From that point, a genuinely difficult thing, a genuinely impressive thing, and a thing that Patricia has interpreted as giving her a particular authority over Daniel's life, that in my view she has not managed to modulate now that he is 36 years old, with a house and a wife and a son. Daniel would tell you, and does tell you, that his mother is a lot, but means well. He uses these two phrases together often enough that I have come to understand them as a unit, a kind of verbal shrug, an acknowledgement, and a dismissal in the same breath. I married him knowing about Patricia. I want to be honest about that. I did not walk into this situation without information. I had been with Daniel for 3 years before we got married, and Patricia had been present in those 3 years in ways that ranged from harmless to uncomfortable. She had opinions about our apartment, our furniture, our vacation plans, my career, my cooking, the order in which we should accomplish various life milestones. She expressed these opinions with the directness of a person who has never been successfully challenged on anything, and has therefore concluded that her opinions are welcome everywhere they are offered. I had managed, with effort. With more effort, I think, than Daniel fully recognized. We had one significant conflict before Oliver was born, a conflict that was, in retrospect, the table of contents for everything that followed. Let me tell you about it. I found out I was pregnant in February, 8 weeks along, confirmed by a doctor who was warm and matter-of-fact, in the way of someone who has been present at many of these moments and understands that they are both ordinary and extraordinary simultaneously. Daniel and I sat in the car after the appointment. He was very still for about 30 seconds, and then he turned to me, and his face had the expression I had only seen on him once before at our wedding, when I came down the aisle, and he said, "Okay, okay," like a man confirming something to himself. "Okay," I said. We called our families that evening, my parents who live in Portland and who received the news with the particular joy of people who have been quietly hoping for this and managed not to say so, were ecstatic in a warm, uncomplicated way. My mother cried. My father said, "Well," several times, in a tone that conveyed more than the word. They asked questions about how I was feeling and made concrete offers of help, and said they would come whenever we needed them, and then got off the phone so we could call the other set of parents. Patricia answered on the first ring. What followed was 45 minutes in which Patricia was, to her credit, genuinely happy. She was excited, she was emotional, She said several things that were genuinely lovely about grandchildren and family and new life. But in the middle of the genuine happiness, things began to appear. "I've been thinking about the nursery," she said within the first 15 minutes of the call. "There's a crib in storage from when Daniel was a baby. It needs some work, but it's solid. And I have the most wonderful christening gown that I'd love to pass down." I had not mentioned a nursery. The pregnancy was 8 weeks along. "That's sweet, Patricia," I said. "I'll send you some photos," she said, "of the nursery furniture. I have a whole vision for it." I looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at the ceiling. "We're really early stage," I said. "We haven't started thinking about the nursery yet." Of course," Patricia said. "There's time. I just want you to know I'm available. Whatever you need." Over the following months, whatever you need turned out to mean a steady stream of suggestions, opinions, photos of nursery furniture. Patricia liked better than what we were considering names. She preferred parenting books she was mailing to us, and an evolving certainty about what the nursery should be that she expressed in various forums to Daniel, to her friends, to her sister who relayed these expressions back to me through a chain of well-meaning intermediaries. The specific crib she wanted us to use, the one from Daniel's babyhood, which she had cleaned and repainted, and which she dropped by our house unannounced in May, loading it off the back of Gary's truck, with the confidence of a delivery of something ordered, was the most concrete of these expressions. Daniel told her gently that we had already purchased our own crib. Patricia said, "Where is the one you bought?" Daniel said, "It's in the nursery." Patricia said, "Can I see it?" We showed her. She looked at it for a moment. It was a beautiful crib, simple white solid. I had researched it for weeks. "It's very plain," she said. "We like it," Daniel said. "Babies like stimulation," she said. "They need visual interest." "Our pediatrician said the opposite, actually," I said. "Calm and minimal for the sleep environment." Patricia smiled in the way she smiles when she disagrees with something, but has decided not to say so in words. She left the crib we had bought in the nursery. She also left Daniel's old crib in our garage, which she referred to as backup. The sage green walls were my choice, made in collaboration with Daniel after 4 weekends of testing paint swatches. We had painted them together in a Sunday in late July, just the two of us with music playing and the windows open, and it was one of those ordinary days that becomes a memory before it's over. The mobile I had ordered from the Etsy maker, a woman in Vermont who made them by hand, small wooden birds in muted natural colours, had arrived after 6 weeks and was the object I was most proud of in the entire room. I had hung it myself, measuring twice, making sure it was exactly centred over the crib. The gallery wall of animal watercolours I had framed over 2 evenings in August. The name letters I had researched and sourced and arranged. The bookshelf I had stocked with the first year's reading, organised by the advice of a child development librarian I had called specifically to ask. I had built that room, with my hands and my time and my specific first-time mother love for a child I had not yet met. Patricia came to see it in September, 1 month before my due date. She walked around it. She said, "It's nice, but it's very plain." She said, "Babies need to feel surrounded by family. There's no family here." She said, "You know, when I set up Daniel's nursery, I made sure he was surrounded by photos of everyone who loved him." I said, "We have a plan for family photos. We'll add them as he grows." She said, "I could bring some of mine. The ones I have of Daniel as a baby, some of Gary's family, the history. Don't you think babies should know their history?" "We'll get to that," I said. She smiled the smile. She left. I stood in Oliver's room after she was gone and felt for the first time the specific chill of knowing that a person has been looking at something you built and has been imagining it differently. I should have said more then. I should have named it then, to Daniel, to Patricia, to the situation clearly and directly, and without the softening that I had been using for months. I didn't. I was 38 weeks pregnant and exhausted, and I told myself I was managing it. I was not managing it. I was postponing the inevitable. 3 weeks later, I went into labour. This is the part of the story that I have had to reconstruct because I was not present for it. I was in the hospital, laboring with a child who had, as I mentioned, decided that 31 hours was the appropriate timeline for his arrival. Daniel was with me. He had been with me from the first contraction at midnight on Tuesday, through the delivery at 7:43 Wednesday morning, and through the 2 days of hospital recovery. He had not left the hospital. We had told both families when I went into labour. Standard notification, we're at the hospital, we'll update when there's news, no visits, until we're home. And settled, per the plan we had explicitly communicated to everyone in advance. Both my parents and Daniel's mother had agreed to this plan. Of course, Patricia had said, when Daniel had told her weeks earlier that we would not be having visitors at the hospital and would need a few days at home to settle before anyone came to visit. Of course, whatever you need, you know I'll give you space. What Patricia gave us, it turned out, was not space. What Patricia gave us was an opportunity. The house was empty. We had given Patricia a key to the house. This had happened 18 months earlier when we had gone on vacation and asked her to water the plants. The key had not been returned. We had not pressed the point in the way we had not pressed many points. On Thursday, the day before we came home, the day we were due to be discharged on Friday afternoon, Patricia used the key. We know the timeline because of the Ring doorbell. 10:47 a.m. Patricia arrives. 10:47 a.m. to 6:23 p.m. Patricia is in the house. 7:32 p.m. Gary's truck is visible in the driveway. The old crib from the garage is moved inside. 7 hours and 36 minutes. I did not know any of this was happening, because I was in the hospital holding my son and sleeping in increments and eating the hospital food that is not as bad as people say, and calling my mother and learning how to breastfeed with the help of a lactation consultant named Donna, who was frank and encouraging in equal measure. Daniel did not know any of this was happening because he was in the room with me, completely present, his phone on silent. Patricia did not call to tell us what she was doing. She did not text. She did not ask. She simply came into our house with a key she had been given for watering plants, and she spent 7 hours and 36 minutes transforming our son's nursery into the room she had been imagining since February, and then she left. Let me tell you what she had done. Our crib moved to the garage. The old crib, which we had explicitly declined, put in its place with the navy and red bedding Patricia had brought. The sage green walls painted over. Patricia had brought primer and white paint. She had painted all 4 walls. It was not a professional paint job. It was fast and slightly uneven in the corner near the window, but it was done. The mobile taken down. I found it later in a box in the garage next to our crib. The arm had been pulled from the mounting bracket without the care that would have kept it intact. One of the small wooden birds was broken. The watercolour animal prints taken off the walls, also in a box in the garage. The rug rolled up and moved to the garage. The name letters taken down, replaced with the gold version she had apparently bought in advance, knowing they would be needed. The bookshelf cleared of the carefully arranged books. The books were in a pile in the corner, not organised, not in a box. The shelf had been replaced with Patricia's objects, the ceramic figurine, the sampler, the plate. The photographs installed on every available wall surface. I counted later 17 framed photographs, the majority featuring Patricia. She had also, I discovered, the following week, thrown away the small collection of items I had placed in the closet. Sample-size products from the baby shower, a small toy from a friend, the handmade blanket my aunt had knitted. She had apparently decided the closet needed to be organised and had determined that these items did not belong. That blanket was the only thing that made me cry. Not the walls, not the crib, not the mobile with the broken bird. The blanket, which my aunt had spent 3 months knitting, was in a garbage bag at the curb. When I stood in the doorway of that room on Friday afternoon with Oliver in Daniel's arms behind me, I did not know about the blanket yet. I knew about the walls and the crib and the photographs. I turned around. Daniel was looking at me. Then he looked past me into the room, and his face did the thing I had never seen it do, I want to describe this carefully because Daniel's response is the heart of this story, and I want you to understand it fully. Daniel is, as I said, not a person given to visible emotional displays. He is steady. He is measured. He is the person who, when things go wrong, becomes more focused rather than less quieter, more precise, working the problem rather than reacting to it. This quality is one of the things I love most about him. It is also a quality that has at times worked against clarity in our relationship with Patricia. Because steadiness and patience in the face of a person who tests those qualities consistently can begin to look like acceptance. Patricia had spent years reading Daniel's steadiness as permission. What I saw in Daniel's face in that hallway was not steadiness. What I saw was the specific expression of a man who has been patient for a very long time and has arrived in one moment at the end of his patience. Not anger, exactly. Anger implies heat, and this was not hot. This was cold. The particular cold of something decided. He looked at the room for perhaps 5 seconds. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at Oliver. Then he looked at the room again. He said quietly, "Go to the bedroom. I'll set up the pack and play for tonight." "Daniel," I started. "I need you to go to the bedroom," he said. "I need you to sit down. You just had a baby 2 days ago, and you need to not be standing in this hallway right now." He was right. I was standing in a hallway 2 days after a 31-hour labour, with stitches and engorgement, and the particular physical fragility of a postpartum body, processing something I did not have the resources to process in that moment. I went to the bedroom. I sat on the bed. I heard Daniel in the nursery moving things. I heard him on his phone. I heard one side of a conversation that was short and very quiet, quieter than Daniel normally speaks, which was itself a signal, and I heard the specific silence that followed it. He came to the bedroom with Oliver. He set up the pack and play beside the bed. He got Oliver settled. He handed me a glass of water. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, and he said, "I called my mother." "What did you say?" I said. "I told her what I found," he said. "I told her she needed to come get her things out of our house, and I told her she would not be coming into our home for the next 6 months." I looked at him. "6 months," I said. "She has a key," he said. "She used it while we were in the hospital and our son had just been born. She redid your nursery. She threw away your things. She painted over the walls you painted. 6 months is not enough, but it's what I said and I'm going to mean it." "She'll be furious," I said. "Yes," he said. "She will." "She'll say I made you do it," I said. "She can say whatever she wants," he said. "It doesn't change what she did or what's going to happen." He was looking at me with the expression level direct, certain of a man who has made a decision he intends to keep. "Rachel," he said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay," I said. "I have been allowing things for years," he said. "With my mother. Things I explained as not worth the conflict. Things I told you to manage. Things I saw and described as her meaning well. And I want to tell you that I've been wrong to do that. Not about specific things wrong about the pattern. I let the pattern develop because I didn't want the conflict. And what happened today is the result of me not wanting the conflict for too long." I sat with this. "This is not your fault," he said. "I want you to hear that. What she did today is not a consequence of anything you did or didn't say to her. It's a consequence of her not believing that our home belongs to us and not to her. And the reason she didn't believe that is partly because I didn't make it clear enough for long enough." He paused. "I'm making it clear now," he said. Oliver made a small sound in the pack and play. We both looked at him. He was fine, just adjusting the way newborns do. "The room," I said. "What are we going to do about the room?" "We're going to put it back," he said. "Not tonight, not this week. When you're ready and when it feels right, we're going to put it back exactly the way you had it." "The mobile," I said. "One of the birds is broken." Something passed through his face. "I know," he said. "I found it. I'm going to contact the maker. I'm going to get it replaced or fixed. I promise you that." I looked at him for a long moment. 9 years of marriage. 9 years of knowing this man and watching him navigate his mother with the patience I had sometimes found reassuring and sometimes found honestly exhausting. And now sitting on the bed 2 days after our son was born, I was watching him arrive at a clarity that I had not known he had fully reached. "Okay," I said. "Okay," he said. "Yes," I said. "Okay. I trust you." He nodded. Oliver made another sound. Daniel stood up and went to check on him. I sat on the bed in my house, and I thought about a room at the end of the hallway that Patricia had spent 7.5 hours transforming, and about the blanket my aunt had spent 3 months knitting, which was at the curb in a garbage bag. And I thought about Daniel's face in the hallway, the cold, decided thing, and I felt underneath the grief of the room something else, something I had not felt in several years of managing and extending benefit of the doubt and softening and choosing battles. I felt that I was not alone in this. For the first time in a long time, not alone. I was not on that first call. Daniel had made it alone in the hallway while I was in the bedroom, and I heard only silence on his end. And so I know it was not a long call. When I asked him about it later that evening after Oliver was settled and we had eaten, and the particular exhausted quiet of a first night home had settled over the house, he told me what had been said. He had told Patricia, "I need you to come get your things from the nursery, all of them, and then I need you to give me the key to our house." Patricia had said, "I was trying to help." Daniel had said, "What you did was enter our home without permission and make changes to a room my wife spent months preparing. That is not help." Patricia had said, "Rachel put you up to this." Daniel had said, "Rachel is sitting in our bedroom 2 days after giving birth. I am making this call because of what I saw in that room. This is from me, not her." Patricia had said, "I was just trying to add some family history, some warmth. That room was so cold," Daniel had said, "you will come get your things, and then I need you to understand that you will not be coming to our home for the next 6 months." 6 months, Patricia had said. "Your son was just born. I'm his grandmother. You're telling me I can't see my grandson for 6 months. I'm telling you," Daniel said, "that you won't be coming to our home for 6 months. That is different from not seeing Oliver. We will arrange visits in other ways. But you came into our home without permission, and you changed things that were not yours to change. There is a consequence for that." Patricia had cried. This was, I understand, predictable, and also real, not performance, but genuine distress. The genuine distress of a person who had done something from love and was now being told that love was not the right frame for it. Daniel had said, "Mum, I love you. This is happening because I love you and because I love my wife and my son. And I'm telling you clearly what the boundary is and what the consequence for crossing it is. That is what I should have been doing for years." And he had hung up. Patricia called back twice that evening. Daniel did not answer. She texted 3 times. He read the texts and did not respond. She called Kim, his sister, who called Daniel that evening to say gently that she had heard from their mother and did he want to talk about it. He said, "Kim, I'm not going to relitigate the call with her through you. I love Mum. What she did was not okay. There's a boundary now, that's all." Kim, to her credit, said, "Okay, I just wanted to check in." She did not attempt to argue. She did not tell Daniel he was wrong. She did not apply the particular pressure of a sibling who has been recruited to shift a position. We found out later that Kim had also separately texted their mother to say, "What you did was not okay, Mum. I know you meant well, but it wasn't your call." I am grateful to Kim for that. Saturday morning, Patricia came with Gary, her ex-husband, who had apparently agreed to come along in some supporting capacity and retrieved her things from the nursery. Daniel answered the door. He was polite. He did not argue. He did not re-explain. He let them in, waited while they took the photographs and the figurine and the sampler and the plate and the bedding and as many other things as they could carry. And when they were done, he walked them to the door. Patricia said at the door, "I want you to know I did this out of love." Daniel said, "I know that." "Then why?" she started. "Because love isn't a permission slip," he said. "Come from love all you want." It doesn't mean you can enter our home without asking and change things my wife spent months building. Love is why I'm talking to you instead of a lawyer. Love is why it's 6 months and not permanent. But love is not the same as permission. I need you to understand that. She left the key on the table by the door. She did not say anything else. Gary, who had been almost entirely silent throughout, paused at the door and looked at Daniel and nodded once in the specific way of a man who understands what he is looking at. "Good for you," Gary said quietly enough that Patricia ahead of him didn't hear it. Daniel looked at him. Gary nodded again and followed Patricia down the path. Daniel closed the door. He stood in the hallway for a moment. Then he came to find me. "She's gone," he said. "Okay," I said. "Are you okay?" he said. I thought about the room at the end of the hallway, the wrong crib, the cold white walls where my sage green had been. "I will be," I said. "Let's put our son to sleep." We did. We did not fix the nursery that week, or the week after. The first 2 weeks of Oliver's life were what the first 2 weeks of any newborn's life are: a total reorganization of the known universe around the needs and schedule of a person who weighs 8 pounds and operates on a system of supply and demand that is non-negotiable and around the clock. Oliver slept in the pack and play in our bedroom. We didn't use the nursery at all in those first weeks. It was simply a room at the end of the hall, with a door I kept closed, because I found it difficult to walk past it, and I was conserving my resources for things that couldn't wait. Daniel had reinstalled our crib in the nursery. He had brought it back from the garage on the Saturday of Patricia's retrieval visit, quietly and without ceremony, and the wrong crib had gone back out with Patricia's other things. So the room had our crib in it. But the walls were still the cold white, and the photographs were gone, leaving small holes where the picture hooks had been, which were themselves a kind of evidence. The mobile was in the garage in its box with the broken bird. In week 3, Daniel sat down with me after Oliver's evening feeding one of those small windows of relative quiet that appear in the early weeks, and he said, "Tell me what you want to do about the room." "I want it back," I said. "Okay," he said. "Where do we start?" "The paint," I said. "I'll get the sage," he said. "Do you have the color code?" I did have the color code. I had it saved in my phone from when I'd originally ordered it, because I had known even then that I might need a second coat. Daniel went to the hardware store the following Saturday morning, while my friend Jen came over to sit with me and Oliver. He came back with the paint and the supplies, and he painted the nursery. Alone. I want to say that clearly he painted it alone. I was not in a physical condition to paint anything. He painted it with the same care we had painted it the first time, 2 coats cut in carefully at the ceiling and the trim. And when he was done, he came to find me and said, "Come and look." I stood in the doorway. The sage green was back. Not exactly the same paint never dries precisely as it looks on the swatch, and different walls drink it differently, but close. The same quality of light, the same calm, the same particular green that had taken me 3 weekends of swatching to find, because it had to be precisely right. I stood in the doorway and felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight since Friday afternoon when we had pulled into the driveway. "Thank you," I said. "It should have been like this when we came home," he said. "I'm sorry it wasn't." I didn't say anything. He knew. Over the following 2 weeks, the room came back in pieces. The watercolor animal prints, I had kept them. Of course, they had been in boxes in the garage, along with everything else Patricia had removed, and they were undamaged. I rehung them myself on a Sunday afternoon when Oliver was sleeping, and I had a window of energy. The gallery wall came back exactly as I had planned it. The rug, Patricia had rolled it and stored it neatly, which was one of the few things she had done carefully. I unrolled it, and it went back. The bookshelf, I reorganized the books. It took me an hour. This sounds like a small thing. It was not a small thing. It was the specific pleasure of putting a deliberate arrangement back together after it had been scattered. The name letters, I had the originals in a box. The gold replacements had gone with Patricia. Oliver went back on the wall in the natural wood exactly where it had been. The mobile. Daniel had contacted the Etsy maker, a woman named Susan, who worked from her home studio in Vermont within days of coming home. He had found her shop, had identified the specific mobile, had written her a message explaining what had happened and asking whether the broken bird could be replaced. Susan had written back within 24 hours. She had said, "I'm so sorry this happened. Please send me the bird. I'll fix it at no charge, and I'd like to add a new one, a different species, as a gift for Oliver." Daniel had sent the bird. In week 4, a small package arrived from Vermont. The bird repaired the break, was in the wing which Susan had spliced and reinforced and repainted so that the repair was nearly invisible from any normal viewing angle. And a new bird, a small owl in the same natural color palette as the others, slightly larger than the rest. Oliver's mobile now has one owl in it. Daniel reattached the mobile to the mounting bracket carefully, this time making sure the bracket was secure and the arm was properly seated. We stood together in the nursery with Oliver in Daniel's arms, and we looked at the room. Sage green walls, white crib, mobile of small wooden birds including one owl, gallery wall of animal watercolors, rug, bookshelf of first books, name letters in natural wood, our room. Oliver looked at the mobile. He was 5 weeks old and his visual focus was still developing, but he tracked the birds in the way that newborns track things, with the focused, unblinking attention of someone encountering something new and finding it worth their time. "Hi," I said to him. "This is your room." He kept looking at the mobile. I looked at Daniel. He was looking at me. "It's back," he said. "It's back," I said. Then I told him about the blanket. I had been waiting, not strategically, not as management of his emotional response. I had been waiting because I had not been able to say it without crying, and in the first 5 weeks, I had not had the resources for crying about anything except things that required immediate responses. "The blanket my aunt made," I said. "Patricia threw it away. It was in a garbage bag at the curb when we came home. I saw it when I went to get the mail the next morning." Daniel was very still. "Did you get it back?" he said. "The garbage had already run," I said. "It was gone." The stillness lasted for a long time. "I need to call my aunt," Daniel said. Not a question. "I already told her," I said. She was okay about it. She said she'd make another one." "I'm going to call her anyway," Daniel said. "You don't have to." "Rachel," he said. "I'm going to call her." He called my Aunt Carol that evening. He apologized to her directly, not on behalf of Patricia. He was careful about that distinction, but for the failure of protection that had allowed it to happen in our home. He thanked her for the 3 months she had put into the first blanket, and told her he was looking forward to the one she was making, and that he and Oliver would treasure it. My aunt, who is 71 and not easily moved, called me the next morning and said, "Rachel, that husband of yours." "I know," I said. "You keep him," she said. "I intend to," I said. "Patricia was not in our home for 6 months. Daniel meant it. I want you to know that he meant it because I have heard enough stories of men who set consequences and then do not follow through under pressure from their mothers, under pressure from siblings, under pressure from the accumulated weight of family expectations. That I want to be clear. Daniel meant it, and he kept it. It was not easy. Patricia called. She called Daniel at a rate that I can only describe as sustained. Not aggressive, not screaming, but consistent and present. Roughly every 4 to 5 days for the first 2 months, dropping to every week or so in months 3 and 4. The calls were a mixture of things: genuine sadness about missing Oliver's early weeks, expressions of hurt about the boundary explanations of intent. She had only wanted to help. She had only wanted to add family to the room. She didn't understand why what she did was so wrong, and periodically suggestions that perhaps the 6 months was more than the situation warranted. Daniel listened. He was not cold on these calls. He was in fact warmer than I think I could have been in his position, patient present, willing to hear what she was saying. But on the question of the boundary itself, he did not move. He said when she suggested it was too long, "Mum, the 6 months is what I said. I meant it. He said when she said she didn't understand what she had done wrong. You entered our home without asking, and you changed things my wife spent months building. You threw away things that belonged to us. You made decisions about our son's room that weren't yours to make. I've explained this several times now, and I'm not going to keep explaining it, he said when she cried. I hear you. I know this is hard. The boundary is still in place. He told me about the calls. This was something he was deliberate about, keeping me informed, not managing me out of his relationship with his mother, even as he was managing that relationship in a new way. He told me what she said and what he said, and he did not expect me to weigh in on the content, but he wanted me to know it was happening and what was in it. I appreciated this more than I could say. One call in month 2 was different. Patricia had apparently, according to Daniel's report, stopped explaining and stopped lobbying, and had instead said, Daniel, I need to ask you something. Okay, he had said. Do you forgive me? She had asked. Not for the purposes of ending the 6 months. Just do you forgive me? As your mother. Do you forgive me for what I did? Daniel had been quiet for a moment. Then he had said, Yes, I forgive you. I'm angry and Rachel is hurt and the boundary is staying. But yes, I forgive you. Patricia had said nothing for a moment. Then, does Rachel? He had said, That's between you and Rachel. She had said, I'd like to ask her. He had said, When the time is right, you can. When he told me about this call, I sat with it. Do I forgive Patricia? It is a question I have turned over many times in the months since. The forgiveness question in cases like this is genuinely complicated. It is not a question about whether what happened was okay. It was not. Not a question about whether the consequences were appropriate. They were not even a question about whether the relationship can continue. It can, with new terms. Forgiveness, I've come to understand, is not a gift to the person who harmed you. It is a decision about what you carry. I didn't want to carry it. I was also not ready to give Patricia the sense that the harm was fully resolved, because it wasn't fully resolved. Not yet. So my answer was not yet, but working toward it. Visits with Oliver during the 6 months happened outside our home. Daniel's parents, both of them separately. Patricia and Gary had remained civil despite their divorce, and occasionally attended the same events, would meet us at a park, or at a restaurant, or at Daniel's sister Kim's house. Oliver went to his first visit with Patricia when he was 6 weeks old, in Kim's living room, where Kim was present, and where the terms of the visit were clear. We arrive. We have time together. We leave when we say we leave. Patricia held Oliver. She was very quiet for a long time, looking at him. He looks like Daniel, she said finally. And me, I said. She looked at me. And you, she said. Yes. It was not warm. It was not hostile. It was 2 people sitting across from each other in a room with a baby between them, finding their way towards something that hadn't yet been built. Oliver, for his part, did what 6-week-olds do. He looked at Patricia's face with the specific, unfocused focus of a baby encountering a new person. And then he did something that Oliver does with some regularity at that age. He smiled. Not a real smile. It was too early for a real social smile. Probably gas. Almost certainly gas. Patricia said, He smiled at me. Daniel looking at his son. He smiles at the ceiling fan too. Kim pressed her lips together very hard. I managed not to laugh. It was the first genuinely normal moment since we had come home from the hospital. In month 4, Patricia sent a letter, not a text, not an email. A letter handwritten in Patricia's careful cursive on her personal stationery, addressed to Rachel and Daniel Marsh with a stamp and everything. I want to tell you about this letter because it is one of the more complicated things in this story. It was 4 pages long. The first page was an apology, a real one, or the closest Patricia had come to a real one. She acknowledged what she had done. She named it. Specifically, she had entered our home without permission. She had changed things that did not belong to her. She had thrown away things that were not hers to throw away. She said she understood that what she had intended did not change what she had done. This was the best part of the letter. The second page began to explain. Not excuse, or she would have said not excuse, but explain. She talked about her own mother, who had been the kind of grandmother who filled every surface with family photographs and family history, and how that grandmother's house had been the centre of her childhood, and how she had wanted Oliver to have that, to be surrounded by where he came from, to feel the weight and warmth of family history. She talked about feeling sidelined during the pregnancy, her suggestions not taken, her vision for the nursery not incorporated, her sense of being kept at a distance from something she very badly wanted to be part of. And then in the third page, she wrote something that I have read many times since, and that I find genuinely interesting in its honesty. I know that what I did was not about Oliver. Not really. I know that now. It was about me, about the room I wanted to build the grandmother. I wanted to be the place I wanted to hold in his life. I took an action that was about my feelings, and I told myself it was about him. I see the dishonesty in that now, and I am sorry for it. The fourth page was a request, not for the boundary to be lifted. She was careful about that. But for the chance when the time was right to sit down with me, not Daniel, specifically me, and talk directly. Not through Daniel. Not with Daniel present as a buffer. Just the two of us. I know I don't have the right to ask for this, she wrote. I know the trust is broken and I am the one who broke it. But I am asking anyway because I think it's the only thing that'll actually change anything between us. Not Daniel telling me what went wrong. Me and you in the same room talking about it. If you ever decide you want that, I'm here. I read this letter 3 times. I gave it to Daniel to read. He read it twice. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think it's the best thing she's written or said since this started." "Is that enough?" he said. "Not yet," I said. "But it's something." I did not respond to the letter. Not immediately. This was not punitive. I was not withholding response as a form of punishment. I genuinely did not know what to say, and I had learned enough about this situation to know that saying something before I knew what I wanted to say would not serve either of us. I let the letter sit. I thought about it. I talked to Daniel about it. I talked to my therapist. I had started seeing someone in month 2, not because I was in crisis, but because the first months of parenthood combined with the nursery situation and the Patricia dynamics were a lot of freight for one person to carry without professional support. My therapist was a woman named Dr. Flores, who had a particular way of asking, "What do you want?" that I found both simple and useful. "What do you want from Patricia?" she asked in the session after the letter arrived. I thought about it. "I want to not be afraid of her," I said. "I want to come home to my house and not feel like the house could be changed while I'm not there. I want Oliver to have a relationship with his grandmother that isn't managed and anxious. I want it to be real." "Can it be real?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "What would make you more certain?" she asked. And that question led me eventually to the answer about the letter. I wrote to Patricia in month 5, not a letter I called her. I chose to call rather than write because I wanted the real time of it, the unedited back and forth that a letter doesn't allow. She answered quickly. I could hear in her voice that she was both expecting and afraid of this call, the specific quality of someone who has been waiting for something and is not certain what form it will take. "Patricia," I said, "I'm calling because of your letter." "I wasn't sure if you'd respond," she said. "I needed time to know what to say," I said. "I understand," she said. I had thought about how to begin this conversation. I had decided to be direct, not cruel, not punishing, but direct, in the way I had not always been in the years before the nursery. The cost of not being direct was something I now understood very clearly. "I want to tell you what it was like," I said, "when we came home, when I walked into that room." She was quiet. "I spent 4 months building that room," I said. "I painted those walls with Daniel on a Sunday in July. I waited 6 weeks for a mobile I had to have made by hand. I spent 2 evenings framing prints and measuring the wall to get them exactly right." I organized the books on that shelf with the help of a librarian I called specifically because I wanted the first year of Oliver's reading to be thoughtfully chosen. Silence. And when I opened that door, I said, all of it was gone, and in its place was your room, your vision, your family on every wall, nothing of mine anywhere. Rachel, she started. I need you to hear this, I said. I'm not saying it to make you feel worse. I'm saying it because your letter asked to be honest with each other. And this is honest. What I felt in that doorway was that my home wasn't mine, that I had built something and it had been taken away and replaced with what someone else decided was better. That's what it felt like. A long silence. I'm sorry, she said, not performatively, quietly, the specific quiet of a person who is sitting with something rather than reacting to it. I know, I said. I believe you. In my letter, she said, I said it was about me, not him. I meant that. I was trying to make myself important in his life, in a way that felt urgent. Like if I didn't establish myself in his room in his first spaces, I wouldn't be real to him. I wouldn't matter. And I know that doesn't make what I did okay. But I want you to know that the urgency was real, even if it was wrong. I sat with this. Patricia, I said, Oliver is 4 months old. He is going to know you for the rest of your life and the rest of his life. And you are going to have decades to become real to him. You don't need to install yourself in his room while I'm in the hospital. You need to show up consistently in the ways you're invited. That's all. That's what makes a grandmother real to a child. Silence. I didn't think I'd be invited, she said quietly. I thought you didn't want me to be as present as I needed to be. Patricia, I said, I'm a reasonable person. I was managing you before the pregnancy because you were a lot, and you know you're a lot, and I was trying to do it without making everything a conflict. But a reasonable relationship with reasonable invitation was always available to you. What you did in our house was the thing that closed it. Yes, she said. I see that now. I also need to tell you something about the blanket, I said. I heard her breath change. Your aunt's blanket, she said. I know. It was in the garbage, I said. The garbage ran. It's gone. I know, she said. Daniel told me. When? I said. I hadn't known that. Month 2, she said. He called me specifically to tell me about the blanket. He wanted me to understand the full scope of what I had thrown away. He was very calm about it. Very specific. I thought about Daniel, calling his mother in month 2 specifically to tell her about the blanket, calmly and specifically, taking on the part of this that was his to take on. My aunt is making another one, I said. I know, Patricia said. I'd like to, if she'd permit it. I'd like to buy the yarn. I was surprised enough by this that I didn't answer immediately. She doesn't need, I started. I know she doesn't need me to, Patricia said, but I'd like to do something concrete, not just apologizing, something that actually does something. I thought about Aunt Carol. I'll ask her, I said. That's all I'm asking, Patricia said. We talked for another 40 minutes, not about the nursery anymore, about Oliver, about the things she had noticed in the park visits and Kim's living room visits, about what he was doing at 4 months, the tracking, the reaching, the specific delight he had recently discovered in his own feet. By the end of the call, we were not in a different place than we had been at the beginning. Not all the way to something new, but the temperature was different. The particular cold of a relationship that has been formally injured was something else, not warm yet, but thawing. Rachel, she said at the end of the call, thank you for calling, for giving me the chance to hear you and to be heard. Yes, I said. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. The 6 months, she said. When is it over? 3 more weeks, I said. And after, she said. After, I said, you ask before you come. You call ahead. You follow our lead about what Oliver needs and when. You understand that this house is ours and that you are welcome in it as a guest, not as a co-owner. Yes, she said. I understand. And we rebuild from there, I said. Slowly, honestly, No more managing and no more assuming. Yes, she said. Okay, I said. We hung up. I sat with my phone in my hand. Oliver was sleeping in the bouncer on the living room floor, his feet up in the air, his arms flung wide in the specific abandon of a sleeping infant who has no concerns about the world. I looked at him. 4 months old. The weight of it, of the time we were in the fragility and fullness of it, was something I felt in the room. It's going to be okay, I told him. He slept. Patricia came to our house for the first time since the nursery incident when Oliver was 6 months old. She called ahead. 2 days ahead, she called Daniel to ask, and Daniel asked me, and I said yes. She arrived at the time she said she would arrive. She brought a gift, not for the nursery, not for the house, not something that implicitly claimed space or expressed an alternative vision for our home. She brought a soft toy, an elephant, which she had bought at a shop downtown. She knocked on the door. I answered it. We looked at each other for a moment. "Come in," I said. She came in. She looked around the entryway. The house, as it was our house, with our things arranged the way we had arranged them, the photographs we had chosen on the walls, the particular slightly cluttered warmth of a home with a new baby in it. She didn't say anything about the decor. She looked at Oliver, who was in Daniel's arms. Oliver looked back at her with the focused evaluation that babies use when encountering people they have seen before but are still categorizing. "Hi, Oliver," she said, softly. Oliver reached out one hand in the reaching gesture that 5 to 6 month olds use when they are deciding whether to engage with something. She offered him her finger. He grabbed it, held it, looked at her. She looked at him. Something passed through her face that I recognized even in a person I did not yet fully trust. The specific, undeniable love of a grandmother for a grandchild. Not the version of love that stakes claims and installs photographs and overpaints walls. The real version, which is just the need to be near this specific person, to be held by this specific tiny hand. "Hello," she said to him quietly. He made a sound. She laughed, a small surprised laugh, the laugh of a person caught off guard by delight. We had tea in the living room. Daniel and I sat on the couch. Patricia sat across from us in the chair with Oliver in her lap after the first few minutes when he had decided she was acceptable. She played with him carefully, engaged with him, responsive to his cues, not overwhelming him, not performing for an audience, just present with him. After about an hour, Oliver got tired. We could see it, the rubbing of the eyes, the downward arc of the energy. Patricia recognized it and handed him back without being asked. "He's tired," she said. "Yes," I said. "I should let you get him down," she said. She gathered her things. At the door, she paused. "The room," she said. "Can I see it?" Just to see it." I looked at Daniel. He looked at me. "Yes," I said. We walked down the hall. I opened the door. The sage green walls, the white crib, the mobile of wooden birds, including the owl from Susan in Vermont, the gallery wall, the bookshelf, the name letters. Patricia stood in the doorway. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "It's beautiful. Not it's plain. Not it needs family. Not an alternative vision. It's beautiful." "Thank you," I said. She nodded. She looked at the mobile, the birds moving slightly in the air from the open door, and then she stepped back. "I'll call next time," she said, "before I come." "I know," I said. She left. Daniel and I stood in the hallway. "Well," he said. "Well," I said. Oliver in my arms made the specific sound of a baby who's ready to be horizontal. "Let's put him down," Daniel said. We put him down. He was asleep in 4 minutes looking at his mobile. Oliver is now 14 months old. He has been walking since 11 months with the specific unsteady confidence of a person who has recently discovered a new mode of transportation and is committed to using it for everything. He says 11 words with clarity and approximately 40 more with intentions that are clear even when the pronunciation is not. His favorite word is buh, which applies to Bird's books, the dog next door, and occasionally Daniel, which Daniel takes as a compliment. He has a grandmother named Patricia, who comes to our house every 3 weeks or so, always having called ahead, always staying for the time that feels right and leaving without having needed to be asked. She does not suggest changes to the house. She does not bring objects that stake claims. She sits on the floor with Oliver and does what he wants to do, which is currently to stack things and then knock them over and over with the philosophical enthusiasm of someone who finds this deeply satisfying. She and Oliver have a relationship. A real one, not manufactured, not managed, not purchased through property rights. Built slowly through consistent presence on terms that everyone agreed to. Patricia and I are not close friends. I want to be honest about that. The closeness that might have been possible in a different version of this story. The warmth, the ease, the relationship that is more than functional is not fully here yet. Maybe it will be. Maybe what we have is what we have. But what we have is real. She respects our home. She respects our decisions about Oliver. She asks instead of assuming. It is not everything, but it is something. Aunt Carol's new blanket arrived in December. It is green, the same sage green as the nursery, which Carol said she chose, for a reason. It is the blanket Oliver drags around the house and calls Buh, and without which he has recently decided he cannot sleep. Patricia bought the yarn. I don't know exactly what exchange happened between Patricia and Carol. They spoke on the phone apparently more than once, and Carol told me only that Patricia had said the right things in the specific tone Carol uses for people who have earned a measure of respect through difficult honesty. The blanket is in Oliver's crib. It goes everywhere with him. It is the thing he loves most after the mobile birds and the word buh and the dog next door. It is green. It is warm. It is real. I want to tell you what I actually learned from this. Not the lesson that's easy to state. The real one. The first thing I learned is about the cost of managing. For years before Oliver was born, I managed Patricia. I chose my battles. I extended benefit of the doubt. I said, "That's sweet Patricia," when I meant, "Please stop." I softened the pushbacks. I let the key stay in her possession because asking for it back would create a conflict I didn't want. Every act of management cost something, not a large thing each time. But over 3 years of managing the accumulated cost was a person who had never been clearly told what the boundaries were and who had therefore never had the opportunity to respect them. The nursery was not inevitable. I believe that genuinely. If I had said clearly in month 2 of the pregnancy, "Patricia, I need you to understand that the nursery is mine to build. I love your ideas. I don't want your help with this one. Please don't bring cribs to our house," the nursery might not have happened. I will never know. But the management I used instead did not prevent it. Clear is kinder than careful. I learned that from the wrong direction, but I learned it. The second thing I learned is about Daniel. I had known in some form that Daniel had it in him to be the person he became on that Friday afternoon. I had married him because of who I understood him to be, and who he is includes the capacity for exactly that kind of clarity. But I had not been certain in the years of his patient management of Patricia that the capacity would activate when it was truly needed. It activated. He activated it himself, not because I asked him to, not because the situation demanded it in a way he had to respond to. He activated it because he looked at that room and understood in that moment what had been wrong for years and what was required now. I asked him once, after everything what had shifted in him in that hallway. He said, "I thought about Oliver. I thought about Oliver being old enough to understand dynamics, to see what the adults around him modeled about how families work. And I didn't want him to learn that his grandmother could walk into your work and change it because she wanted to, that his father would say nothing because it wasn't worth the conflict. I didn't want to model that." He paused. "I also just looked at the room," he said, "and I thought about the Sunday in July when we painted it. And I thought, this is wrong. This is simply wrong. And someone has to say it. That someone was him. I will be grateful for this for the rest of my life." The third thing I learned is about what mothers-in-law and new mothers usually don't say to each other. Patricia told me in that 5th-month phone call that she had felt sidelined during the pregnancy, that she had felt the urgency of claiming a place in Oliver's life because she was afraid she wouldn't have one if she didn't act. I understand this fear. I genuinely do. In a culture where new parents often retreat into their nuclear family and grandparents find themselves at a managed distance, the fear that you will be peripheral to your grandchild's life is real and common, and not without basis. What Patricia did with that fear was wrong, but the fear underneath it is worth naming. If I could have that conversation again, not just the pregnancy, but years earlier, I would have said to Patricia, "I hear that you're afraid you won't have a place. Let me tell you what would give you a place. Show up when invited. Follow our lead. Build a relationship with us, not just with the idea of us. And trust that a grandmother who does those things will have a place that is more real and more lasting than any you could claim by moving into rooms while we're not home." I didn't say it then. I'm saying it now. To Patricia. To every grandmother who is afraid. To every new parent who is managing. To everyone clear is kinder than careful. Say the real thing, before the nursery. And now I want to ask you something, because I know that people watching this story are going to have one of several reactions, and I'm curious which one you have. The first reaction is about Daniel. Some of you are going to say good for him. Finally, a husband who actually stood up instead of hiding behind "she means well." And I agree. It was the thing I needed most and did not always expect. But I also want to ask, why is it rare enough to be remarkable? Why do we find husband stands up for wife against his mother to be notable? Why is that not simply what happens as the obvious thing, the default thing when a mother-in-law overrides a new mother's choices in her own home? I don't have a clean answer, but I sit with the question. The second reaction is about Patricia. Some of you are going to say she should have gotten more than 6 months. She should have had permanent consequences. The letter was too little too late and the relationship should have been ended. I respect that view. I held it myself at certain moments. But I chose something different. I chose to work towards something that was real, even if it was smaller and harder than either a clean break or a comfortable pretense. And I think that was right for us, for Oliver, for the particular family we are. That doesn't mean it's right for everyone. Every situation has its own texture. Some mothers-in-law are genuinely dangerous, genuinely unable to change, genuinely requiring a permanent wall. Some situations do not have a path to the slow thaw I described. Only you know your situation. The third reaction is about me. Some of you are going to say you managed too long. You should have been clearer earlier. You should have asked for the key back. You should have named the pattern in the pregnancy rather than saying, "That's sweet, Patricia." Yes, probably. All of that. I learned it the hard way. Clear is kinder than careful is not a thing I understood before the nursery. I understand it now. And the fourth reaction, the one I'm most interested in, is from the people who recognize themselves in this. Not me. Not necessarily. But Patricia. I wonder if there are people watching this who have at some point let urgency and love and fear tip them into something they knew was not right, who walked into someone else's space and made decisions that were not theirs to make and told themselves it was helping. I am not here to shame you. I am here to say that phone call. I described the one in month 5 where Patricia said, "I was trying to make myself important in his life in a way that felt urgent." That honesty, however late, however hard, was what made the rebuild possible. If you are someone who has been Patricia in this story, not in the nursery maybe, but in some version of it, the call is still available to you. The honest conversation is still possible. You don't have to wait for a letter. You can call. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you're carrying. Tell me about your mother-in-law, or about being a mother-in-law. Tell me if you've had a Daniel, someone who stood up when it mattered, and you didn't expect them to. Tell me about your sage green walls. I read every comment. I'm Rachel. Oliver is 14 months old and calls his mobile "buh" and drags a green blanket everywhere, and has the specific, unconditional certainty of a child who knows he is loved. By his mother, by his father, by his grandmother whose finger he grabbed at 6 months old and who has been building something real ever since. By everyone. That was always the point.